Hi, my name is Alex. I'm from Bronx, New York. I was diagnosed when I was 15 in January of 2011. My initial symptoms were that I had optic neuritis. I didn't know what that was at the time, and I was freaking out because I couldn't see out of my eye, and it was painful. And the ophthalmologist told me I needed to go into a hospital and get IV steroids for 5 days, and I freaked out and said, no, it's okay, I'm not in a lot of pain, because at that time I was terrified of needles. I was in denial when they said that I had multiple sclerosis because I just couldn't believe it, and I didn't want to, and I didn't want to look it up. I told my mom not to tell me anything about it, and I was just really in denial. It didn't matter what anybody said. So 5 months later, when the nurse came to my house with my medication and taught me how to use Copaxone, I said to her, I don't have MS, and that was really weird. So I was on Copaxone for about a year and a half until I stopped using it and said, I don't want to take needles anymore. And my doctor gave me a different medication. That year, I went to Teen Adventure Camp for kids with MS, and that made it a lot easier because I was there with about 35 other people who had MS and who were young, and they really helped me just understand it and, accept it for what it was. I go to the camp every year. This past year I was a counselor, and that was a different experience. I learned something new every time I go, and I always recommend it to anybody who's a teen with MS. Right now, my worst symptoms are muscle spasms and sensitivity to heat. I really hate the summer. I don't leave my house. I stay in my air-conditioned house and just read books and watch Netflix. I get a lot of headaches, back problems, anxiety, depression, so I'm on a bunch of medications. But it doesn't matter. I wouldn't change anything. Like my whole diagnosis and the past 4 years of my life, I wouldn't change a thing. If I can go back in time and not have MS, I wouldn't. I would still have it because I'm a better person now and I'm more empathetic, and I got an amazing family at camp, and I wouldn't do anything differently. So I accept MS for what it is, and I don't let it control me, and it's part of who I am. And I hope that other people, other kids, feel the same way. I try to help everybody, but it's not that bad. It's an invisible disability, and it is kind of difficult when you're going to school or something and you say that you have an elevator key and they're like, well, what's wrong with you? You look fine. That's kind of the hardest part about having MS, is trying to explain to people that that you have a disease, but it's invisible. You can't tell. Well, why aren't you in a wheelchair? Why don't you have crutches or a cane or something? Like, I'm a kid with MS, and that's it. If you look up the disability, like, you would know. And that's what I say to people. I tell them to look it up if you really want to know more. If you want to be in my life and you want to know who I am, that's part of it. So now I'm 19 and I'm in college. And I've actually been to the MS Society meeting with all of the people who run the MS Society, like the president, and I spoke for kids with MS, and I told them all about the camp, and it was a really nice experience for me because being the youngest person in the room and having MS, nobody in the room could relate to me, and it was the first time they could have somebody speak who had MS. So, they knew firsthand what was going on, and that was a pretty awesome experience. I do have anxiety with speaking, and that was a huge step for me. So, thanks for listening to me.